Welcome, everyone, into another edition of Donovan and Dino on this Monday afternoon. I'm Dave DeNatale alongside the voice of the Browns and three sports anchor Jim Donovan, as the Browns are now 6-3 off of their 10-7 win over the Texans on Sunday. And Jimmy, it was like a back to the basics kind of game for the Browns. Nick Chubb was back, Wyatt Teller was back, and that ability to move the line of scrimmage in the fourth quarter was back, and that all kind of added up to a victory.
Yeah, they went back to their identity and what they did so well early in the year when they jumped out to that 4-1 start. And all of those guys that you mentioned were healthy, and they were playing each and every Sunday. To have them back and to have to play in the weather that they played in yesterday, that weather is suited for a running game, and the Browns are a running football team, and that's what they do well. That's the thing they do best, and that's the card they're going to have to play each and every week because that's where their talent is. And so going back to that and being patient with it, because it wasn't always there during the afternoon. I mean, there were a lot of one-yard runs in that game that really kind of kept them from, another coach might say, you know what, let's get away from the run. But they stayed with it, and it paid off, and it started to click, I think, in the third quarter. When Chubb had that drive and he covered the last 35 yards of the drive and had a great touchdown run from 9 yards out where he made a cut left made a cut right and then came back to the left and went in and scored. You knew that he was back and everybody was rolling. The offensive line was rolling. And then Kareem Hunt came in and he did the same thing when he got his shot. And then, of course, Nick finished it off. So that's the way they're going to do it. And it works for them. It really does. And it's tough to defend.
And, I thought about, your adopted son, Nick Chubb, on that final run that, I think almost anybody else would have taken it for the touchdown. And I know the Browns had even talked to him about the no Moss play. But, your human instinct is see end zone, go to end zone. He has the presence of mind to get out of bounds and basically set the Browns up for victory. He deserves an extra piece of pumpkin pie when he comes over to the Donovan farm for Thanksgiving this year, I think, for that play.
Well, we will definitely do that. I'll tell you, you're right. He's a very special player. He really is. I just admire him so much, the way he plays. I admire the way he practices and obviously the way he trains. And they even said that he attacked his rehab from this knee injury because he wanted to be back as quickly as he possibly could be back because he knew the team needed him. He's all about winning. He's not about 100-yard rushing games. But, if you give the ball to him enough, that's a foregone conclusion that he's going to get you there. But I go back to 2007 in a game against the New York Jets, the year the Browns were 10-6, and they were driving to the playoffs, and they're playing in the Meadowlands, and they're in a really tough game that they need to win to stay relevant in the playoff hunt because it's really in December, and it's getting late. And they have the same situation that if they get a first down, it looks like the game is over. They give the ball to Jamal Lewis. He takes it through. He gets the 2 yards he needs, and boom, he's gone. He goes in for a touchdown. And it was all good. It was exciting to watch him break through like that. But it wasn't the right play because then the Jets got the ball back and they scored. And then because the Browns went into that awful prevent defense and prevented themselves almost from winning the game. But then it forced the Browns to have to cover an onside kick, which is very, very dangerous. Now, you go back to yesterday. If Nick Chubb goes in and scores, the Texans get the ball back. And if they go down and either kick a field goal or score, the Browns are going to have to cover an onside kick. Think about what happened on the ensuing kickoff after the Texans had scored the touchdown on the pass from Watson to Pharaoh Brown. Donovan Peoples-Jones bobbles the kickoff, kicks it, barely recovers it, and the Browns start at their own 3-yard line. It was not a day to be covering kicks, never mind an onside kick, and never mind with the game on the line. So the fact that Nick Chubb did that just tells you what a complete football player he is and how much he wants to win.
And to a man, I was on Twitter after the game and, Mac Wilson, Myles Garrett, a lot of his teammates, and not just offensive teammates, but, his teammates really appreciated the unselfishness, the heads up, all those things that you embrace as a teammate. And that said something to me too, that about this football team and the cohesiveness that, they have and that Kevin Stefanski's brought, that they appreciate, the little things that their teammates do, not just the big plays, but the little things.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, there was quite a scene right after the game. I don't know if the television cameras stayed on it, because normally they're looking for the head coach to go across the field and congratulate the other head coach. So I don't know if they were watching to see Kevin Stefanski go over and congratulate Romeo. And I know they were on a tight time limit too, because of the delay at the game at the start of the game. And I don't know if they were cutting to another game. But as soon as the game ended, the Browns completely as a team did not go over and congratulate the Texans. They all streamed out to where about the Texans 5-yard line because the Browns, and they all went over, tapped him on the helmet, hugged him, lifted him up. It was just, and that's what he means to the team. He's that important, and he's just an intelligent football player who is just all about whatever it takes to win. He really doesn't care about personal statistics or if he's going to win the rushing title. I think he was devastated last year at the 6-10 mark that they had, and that he wasn't 100% at the end of the year, probably for the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season. He was just so banged up, but he wasn't disappointed that, that he didn't win the rushing title on the last day of the season and that Derrick Henry went by him. He was more upset that they were 6-10 and that obviously people were going to lose their jobs, and did in fact lose their jobs because of the spiraling season that went down the drain on them. And that's just the kind of guy he is.
On the flip side, Myles Garrett on the defensive side had another big game. He had the sack, but to me it was that play on 4th down on the quarterback draw by Watson that he stuffed, that just reminded me why this guy is a defensive player of the year front runner. When you need the big plays the most. Not when you're up by a couple of touchdowns or you're down by a couple of touchdowns, but in the pivotal parts of these close games, Myles Garrett continues to come through. And, like Chubb, it's good to see him healthy again.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you go back to all of their wins, and I can recall them. I mean, if you go to the Cincinnati win on Thursday night at the stadium, Myles Garrett comes up with that big strip sack of Joe Burrow down deep in the Bengals territory after the Browns had been stuffed on a 4th down situation. Chubb had been stopped by the Bengals defense on a 4th down situation, and Myles Garrett went in and batted the ball away. They recovered the ball, and then they turned that in to a subsequent touchdown. You go down to Dallas, the Dallas game. He comes up with a big, big play, a strip sack in that game, and Olivier Vernon recovers it, and the Browns start to build that lead that finally, got them over the finish line, and they beat the Cowboys. The second Cincinnati game, that's not going well. Baker Mayfield can't complete a pass. He's 0 for 5, and they're losing in the game. Myles Garrett comes up and knocks the ball away from Joe Burrow and strips it away from him. The Indianapolis game, I mean, the same thing. He traps Phillip Rivers in the end zone. It turns into a safety. A tight 7-point lead turns into a 9-point lead. A 2-score game. Really, any one of their victories, he has had a huge part of, and a big play at a very, very critical time in the game. And, that says it all.
Absolutely. As you look at now, we talked about this 2 weeks ago after the Raiders game. The Browns are 6-3. They've got 7 games to go. And again, it's you got the toughies with the Steelers and the Ravens. And that Titan game on December 6th, which really is going to look like, high noon. That's going to be a big one. And then you've got the 4 games that the Browns will be favored in. What's your assessment now about this team going into this last stretch here as they try to make a playoff push, knowing they're going to need at least 10, maybe 11 wins to get over the hump and into the postseason?
Well, I would like to think 10 will get them in. And I know a lot of people think, well, it's very congested right now at 6-3. But remember, there'll be some separation. People are going to, lose some games. And hopefully it's not the Browns that are losing those games. Here's what I think. I take the Browns week to week. I have a tough time and have been burned too many times by them right in the heart when you kind of take a game and say, well, you can put that one in the win column. And I think so. I take them week to week. So I'm going to take them this week against Philadelphia. Certainly a winnable game. I think the Eagles are a beaten up football team right now, but probably a very disturbed football team because of what happened yesterday, losing to the Giants. So I think that's going to be a difficult game. I think they're all going to be difficult going in. Here's my concern for the Browns right now. I think it's great they have the running game back, but I'm worried about the passing game. And it's not because of the weather, but it is because of Odell Beckham Jr. not being in the lineup, because he made other defenses just honor him, and you had to play him on every play. And a lot of times you had to play him with double coverage. And I worry that the Browns do not have enough of a threat right now in their passing game, because for some reason Landry is just not the same player. He's just not the same player that he was, and I'll say 2 years ago, Dino, his first year here with the Browns. And he was good last year, but his first year with the Browns, he was exceptional and a big-time playmaker. That deep threat, that dangerous play that has defenses saying, hey, listen, we have to shift coverage over to this guy because he's so dangerous. That's what Beckham gave you on every play. And then, of course, he'd make plays. So I see guys like Kaderil Hodge and Hollywood Higgins out there, and I see the tight ends, and I just don't see the ball going to them. And I'm okay if that's because of the wind and the weather that's been in the last two games. But at some point, they're going to have to throw to win, and they're going to have to really count on these guys. And I don't know if they're going to be able to deliver the way that they're going to, need to deliver to get them over the hump. I think the running game will always be there as long as these guys stay healthy. But I worry a little bit about the potency of the passing game, and it's not necessarily on the guy who's throwing the football.
Two non-related Browns things to wrap up Donovan and Dino today. One, you, as people know, are a dyed-in-the-wool Notre Dame guy. You love the Irish, you love the history, and you also love the history of the NFL. Got to ask you that the passing of Paul Hornung, the golden boy, late last week, had to resonate with you a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a tremendous player. Imagine, Dino, he won the Heisman, and they were a horrible team at that time. I mean, he won the Heisman. They had a losing record the year he won the Heisman. That's how outstanding he was to get that kind of recognition. Now, he'll always tell you, hey, listen, I'm not stupid. I realize that if you're the quarterback at Notre Dame, that's one of the premier positions in college football. Even today, it still is a premier position in college football, and you get a lot of notoriety, you get a lot of publicity, and that helped him a great deal. But what he then did in the professional ranks, I think that Vince Lombardi thought he was probably the most valuable player that he ever coached. He did everything. He could kick, he could punt, he could return kicks, he could obviously play quarterback, and he was a great running back. I mean, this guy was as complete a player as you could ever, imagine. And then I have to tell you, as a broadcaster, I used to always enjoy when he was with Lindsey Nelson, and they would do the Notre Dame games, and they would replay the game on Sunday mornings. And you'd go to church, being a good Catholic boy, you'd go to church on Sunday morning early, and you'd come back in time for Notre Dame highlights. And there would be Lindsey Nelson on the play-by-play and Paul Hornung alongside of him. When Notre Dame won the Cotton Bowl down and defeated Earl Campbell down in Texas, it was CBS was carrying the game, and it was, Texas was undefeated. Notre Dame, I believe, was undefeated going into the game. And it was Lindsey Nelson calling the play-by-play. Paul Hornung was his partner. And people around the country, and especially in Texas, went crazy because they said, hey, this is a Notre Dame broadcast crew. So they took the CBS sports anchor from Dallas, and they brought him in to be the third member of the booth. But I just remember Paul Hornung as a player and as a broadcaster and as a real character. I mean, he was the Golden Boy. That was his nickname, the Golden Boy at the Golden Dome.
Yeah. First year I ever went to a Hall of Fame induction ceremony in 1985. He was in that class in Canton, and it just amazing legacy with the Packers. Final thing I want to exit with, because people, I get asked about these things with Jim Donovan, and, obviously this isn't a travel year for you with Browns on the road, but when you are on road trips, one of the ways that you like to unwind a little bit is with the Hallmark Channel and the great Christmas movies that they have. That is underway. I actually watched A Timeless Christmas, the movie, last night, but just for fun. I mean, somebody said Jimmy's got to give us his favorite Hallmark movie. I'm like, well, I don't know if he can do that. There's so many, but that's something that just I know I unwind with HGTV during a broadcast after you're all fired up. So that really relaxes you, doesn't it?
I'm sorry. Yes, it really does. All the titles seem to be the same to me. So as far as picking out a title, it's hard for me. I know they all end in Christmas, but coming up with the particular title is difficult for me. There was one, though, that, there were two that really hit me. There was one where a father and his family Christmas trees I think it was Manhattan, in the middle of New York, and went away because he wanted to be an artist, and he was sketching different church spires around New York. And the father had to look for him for a year. That was a good one. There was another one where Ed Asner was in it, and he was the head of a lumber company in lumber country, and that was one of my favorites too. So when those two come around, I'm always there. Anne Hesh was in the first one that I talked about. She was she was the lead actress in the one I was talking about, where the father and the son had a disagreement about him wanting to be an artist and going to art school, and the father wanted him to run his Christmas tree farm and then go into the city during the season and sell Christmas trees. But I love them. I love them in July. Never mind right now.
Absolutely, get you in the spirit. But I promised I would ask you about it, so I had to do it. Jimmy, thanks for your time as always here on Donovan and Dino. We'll look forward to seeing you kind of talk more about all this with the Browns starting at 5 on what's new, and then on what matters most, front row, and what's next. We always appreciate it on Mondays, my friend.
All right, thanks, Dino.
All right, thanks to you all for watching Donovan and Dino right here on WKYC.com.